The human envoy stood within the grand chamber of the Galaxy Council, a hall, unlike anything ever seen by human eyes, stretching wider than entire cities, with ceilings so high that clouds formed inside its vast dome. The air shimmered with strange colors that moved like liquid light, and the voices of 1,000 alien delegates echoed endlessly through the space, each voice layered with tones beyond the range of human hearing. He had traveled across the stars as a messenger of peace, believing that diplomacy could hold the fragile balance between Earth and the great civilizations of the galaxy. But as he stood there, bound in chains forged from metals unknown, he understood the terrible mistake that had been made. The council was not here to listen. The council was here to judge. Around him sat beings of countless forms, some with crystalline bodies that refracted light in endless patterns, some with wings that shimmered like glass, some with forms of pure energy that pulsed with silent power, all eyes fixed on him with contempt and suspicion. To them, the envoy was not a diplomat, he was a criminal, a symbol of a world that defied their ancient authority. The presiding figure of the council rose from a throne of obsidian that floated above the assembly, its form cloaked in shadows that shifted like smoke. It raised a hand of light, and the chamber fell silent. The envoy felt the weight of galaxies pressing down upon him. As the verdict was prepared, the alien voice rang out in 1,000 tones at once, declaring that the human envoy stood guilty of trespassing, guilty of defiance, guilty of crimes, not only against the council but against the balance of the cosmos itself. The envoy struggled to speak, his voice trembling, yet filled with desperation. He spoke of Earth, of its people, of the dream that humanity could stand among the stars as equals. He pleaded that the council see reason, that the chains of fear be broken, that peace not war define their future. But his words fell like dust in a storm. They were swallowed by silence and scorn. The council chamber erupted with sound, alien voices chanting alien languages, weaving into a single wave of judgment. He saw no mercy in their eyes, no compassion, only cold certainty. The presiding figure lifted its hand once more, and the chains around the envoy tightened, dragging him toward the center of the hall, where a circle of light burned upon the floor, a circle that pulsed with ancient energy. The envoy resisted, but the chains were alive, pulling with strength beyond his body. He stumbled forward, each step echoing in the silence, each breath heavy with dread. He looked up one last time at the endless assembly of the galaxy, and he saw no allies, only accusers. He understood then that this was not a trial, it was a performance, it was an execution, meant to send a message to Earth, and to all who might rise against the Council. The circle of light grew brighter. The envoy closed his eyes. He thought of Earth, of oceans and forests, of the voices of his people. He thought of the blue sky he might never see again, and he whispered a silent vow. Though the council would end him, Earth would not bow, Earth would rise. The council delivered its verdict, swift and merciless, the sentence spoken in unison by voices of 100 worlds, their tones layered into a single decree that thundered through the chamber. The human envoy would be executed before the eyes of the galaxy, his death to stand as proof that no one may defy the eternal authority of the council. Guards of alien design advanced upon him, towering figures clad in armor that shimmered with scales of living metal, their movements silent, precise, and cold. They dragged him to the platform of judgment at the center of the chamber, a slab of stone older than empires, carved with symbols that pulsed with otherworldly energy. It was a place of ancient executions, where countless lives had ended. In silence and fire, the envoy resisted with every ounce of strength, but his chains pulled tighter with each struggle. They were not mere iron, they were woven from energy itself, humming with the force of stars. The guards forced him down to his knees, his hands bound against the cold surface of the stone. The platform glowed as the runes came alive, drawing power from the heart of the chamber itself. Round the platform, the delegates rose to their feet, each one representing a different race of the galaxy, each one watching with eyes of judgment or hunger or fear. They did not see a man, they saw an example, a warning, a tool to secure their rule. The envoy felt the weight of 1,000 gazes pressing down upon him, crushing his spirit with their contempt, yet deep within his chest, his resolve only hardened. The presiding figure floated forward, its form cloaked in shadows. With eyes of fire, it raised a staff forged from crystal and void. Its voice rose above all others, a declaration that the human envoy had defied the sacred order, had rejected the will of the council, and had therefore chosen death. It spoke not to him, but to the galaxy, to the millions watching through streams of energy that carried the broadcast across star systems to every world under council rule. The platform shook as the execution ritual began. Energy crackled through the air, weaving into patterns of blinding light. The envoy felt pain like fire coursing through his body, tearing at his flesh and soul, but he clenched his jaw, refusing to scream, refusing to give them the satisfaction of his fear. His heart pounded, his vision blurred, yet still he thought of Earth. He thought of the billions who would see this moment. He thought of the leaders who would not forgive. The chanting of the council grew louder. The chamber trembled with the force of their combined will. Shadows and fire swirled around the envoy. As the ritual neared its end, he lifted his head, his eyes locking on the presiding figure, and though his body was failing, his gaze burned with defiance. He wanted them to see that Earth would not break. A final surge of energy ripped through him. A beam of searing light enveloped his form, and in that instant the human envoy was gone, reduced to ash, carried into the void by the cold will of the council. The chamber fell silent as his chains clattered empty upon the stone, his death complete, his message unfinished, yet the fire of his defiance already set to ignite across the stars. Across the void, the transmission of the execution reached Earth, carried by streams of data, intercepted from the network of the Council, and relayed by hidden satellites. The people of Earth gathered in silence, as the image of their envoy bound in chains appeared upon their screens. Every home, every city, every settlement fell quiet as his final moments unfolded before them. Children, who had been told stories of hope and unity, now saw only betrayal and death, their eyes wide with fear, as the man who had been chosen to speak for humanity was dragged across alien stone and destroyed by a force they could not comprehend. Mothers and fathers clenched their fists in grief, while soldiers, who had once believed in peace, felt their hearts harden with rage. In the great halls of government, the leaders of Earth watched as the image of the envoy dissolved into nothing, his body erased by light, his chains falling empty against the stone. The chamber of the council filled with shadows and alien voices chanting their authority. The silence in the Earth chamber was more terrible than any sound, for in that silence a vow was being written upon every soul that had seen. The leader of the global assembly rose from her chair, her eyes locked on the screen where the execution had ended. She spoke not with words of sorrow, but with words of fire. Her voice carried to the generals, the scientists, the citizens who all listened. With hearts pounding, she declared that Earth would not bow to tyranny. She declared that the envoy had not died in vain, for his death was proof that the galaxy feared humanity. Billions watched as her words spread across the networks of Earth. She spoke of history of centuries where humanity had endured famine, war, plague, and yet survived. She spoke of resilience forged in fire, and she told them that the time of patience was over. The Council had chosen blood, and Earth would answer with steel. On the streets of the city's voices rose in unison. Anger turned to fury, and fury turned to resolve. Crowds gathered, waving banners of Earth ships, soared overhead, leaving contrails of fire as they rushed to assembly points in hidden facilities long kept secret. Entire fleets stirred awake, but beneath the roar of fury there was grief, heavy and raw. Families wept for the envoy, who had stood alone among the stars, his life cut short not for a crime but for defiance. His face became a symbol, painted upon walls, carved into stone, broadcast across networks, as a reminder that Earth could not trust the Council. Across the oceans, beneath the skies, in every corner of the planet, the people of Earth carried his memory in silence, then in chants, then in cries for vengeance. The execution that was meant to break their spirit instead united them in fire, a fire that would soon spread beyond their world. In that moment humanity made its choice. They would not hide, they would not kneel. Earth would rise against the galaxy. In the deepest chambers beneath the surface of Earth, where no satellite of the Council could reach, the leaders of humanity gathered within the War Assembly Hall, a place built long ago, not for peace, but for the day when peace would shatter. They sat in silence, their faces lit by the glow of ancient consoles that had not been touched in generations, consoles that stored secrets too dangerous to be known until now. The leader of the assembly stood before them, her voice sharp and steady, as she spoke of the envoy whose execution was burned into the memory of every citizen. She spoke of betrayal and dishonor, and then she spoke of the protocols written long ago by ancestors who had foreseen the possibility that humanity might face extermination by forces beyond Earth. The great vaults were opened, their seals broken with codes forgotten by most, yet preserved by those who understood the nature of history. Behind the steel doors lay weapons and machines forbidden by every treaties stored in silence while the world above dreamed of peace. They were not ordinary weapons, they were engines of annihilation designed to burn stars and shatter. Fleet scientists and generals gathered around the consoles, reading the directives that had not been spoken aloud in centuries, the Extermination Protocol written in stark language. Without mercy, without hesitation, the protocol demanded that if humanity were struck down by another power, it would rise in fury and ensure that its enemies would pay with everything they held dear. The room grew heavy with silence as the leaders debated, yet their debate was short, for the images of the envoy's death played across their minds, his chains, his defiance, his final gaze. The decision was not a question, it was inevitable. Earth would answer. Earth would activate the protocol. The order was given across the globe. Signals were transmitted through secure networks deep into the bunkers, where factories slept like giants in chains. The silence broke as turbines roared, engines screamed, and assembly lines long dormant came alive with fire. Massive machines rolled from their hidden shelters, weapons gleamed under the lights of awakening industry from orbit. Old satellites blinked, awake, their eyes scanning the stars, feeding data to the war councils of Earth. Fleets hidden beneath oceans and mountains rose into the open air, their hulls black and silver, their engines burning with plasma. As they joined the sky, humanity was no longer waiting, humanity was preparing for war. In the assembly hall, the leader of Earth stood at the center of the chamber, her hand raised above the console that contained the final command. She looked into the faces of her council and saw no fear, only fire. Her voice echoed across the chamber when she spoke the words of activation. Earth is no longer bound. Earth is no longer silent. Earth has chosen. The Extermination Protocol was live, and the galaxy would soon feel the weight of a world united in vengeance. The sound of engines thundered across the skies of Earth as the first warships emerged from their hidden docks, their massive hulls gleaming like blades of iron under the sunlight. For generations they had slept, buried beneath oceans, sealed in mountain caverns, buried in deserts, waiting for the day when humanity would need them. Now the day had come, and they rose in in every nation, across every continent. The factories burned with relentless fire, pouring out machines of war at a pace unseen in history. Colossal mechs strode from assembly yards, Titanic carriers slid into orbit, and swarms of drones filled the air like metallic locusts, their wings glinting as they spread across the sky. Entire cities echoed with the roar of engines, as if the planet itself had awakened. Civilians poured into the streets to watch the ascent of their fleets, their grief transforming into awe as they saw the strength of their world revealed. What had been hidden for so long was now unleashed, and the envoy who had died in silence was now reborn in the war cries of his people. Every ship painted with his symbol, every soldier wearing his image upon their armored children, lifted their faces to the sky as shadows of warships passed overhead, their voices rising in chants that echoed the vow of their leaders. Earth will not bow. Earth will not forgive. Earth will rise. The chants grew louder, carried from city to city, until the whole planet pulsed with a rhythm of war. In orbit above the planet, the first battle groups formed, their wings of steel spreading like constellations, engines burning bright against the blackness of space. Commanders stood upon their bridges, their faces carved with resolve as they watched their fleets gather, each one aware that they were not marching to defend, they were marching to avenge. Deep within command centers, generals studied star charts and plotted trajectories across the spiral arms, their fingers tracing the paths that would lead them directly into the heart of council space. The Extermination Protocol gave no room for hesitation. It demanded that humanity strike fast, strike hard, and strike without mercy, to show the galaxy that Earth was not prey, it was predator. All across the networks of Earth, broadcasts carried the sight of the rising fleets to every citizen. Billions watched as their world became a fortress, their voices united in a single vow that echoed louder than any declaration of peace, the vow of vengeance, the vow of survival, the vow of supremacy. The fleets grew in number, their weapons primed, their engines aligned, their orders clear to cross the void and burn the symbols of the council until nothing remained. Earth was no longer patient. Earth was war, and war was rising from every horizon. In the command hall, the leader of Earth watched the screens as the fleets aligned. Her hand pressed upon the console, her words carried to every soldier, to every ship, to every citizen, her voice sharp as steel. The time of silence is over. The time of fear is over. Earth rises today and the sky burned with fire as humanity prepared to leave its home behind to carry its wrath into the stars. Far across the stars within the fortified systems of the Galaxy Council, fear began to spread like cracks across glass. Though the Council projected an image of strength, its delegates whispered behind sealed doors, their voices laced with unease. The execution that was meant to silence humanity had instead awakened something they had not anticipated, a fury that carried the weight of a whole world on distant worlds where citizens watched the broadcast of the human envoy's final defiance. Doubts grew in their hearts. Some looked upon the human with pity, others with respect, and many with fear, for they saw in his eyes a fire that even death could not extinguish. They whispered to one another in markets and in temples, if Earth would truly rise, if the Council had gone too far, if perhaps they themselves would one day face the wrath of humanity within. The Council chambers' arguments erupted between the great powers. Some voices demanded unity and swift preparation for war. Others whispered that Earth was but a minor world, not worth their attention. Yet those whispers grew weaker each hour as reports streamed in intelligence of fleets rising from hidden strongholds, images of colossal warships piercing the skies of Earth, signals intercepted that spoke of an ancient protocol designed only for destruction. A presiding figure of the Council struck its staff upon the chamber floor, demanding silence, declaring that the Council must stand united against this rebellion, declaring that Earth must be crushed before it spreads. Yet even as the words echoed across the hall, doubt gnawed at the hearts of many delegates who feared that the execution had been a mistake. A spark lit in dry grass, now turning into a wild. Colonies at the edge of Council territory began to panic. Local governors called for reinforcements. Citizens crowded spaceports, desperate to flee before the storm arrived. Rumors spread of Earth fleets already advancing, though no contact had yet been made. The fear alone was enough to weaken the unity that the Council claimed to hold in. The hidden networks of rebellion groups, long oppressed by the Council, began to stir. Whispers of Earth's defiance gave them hope. They saw humanity not as a threat but as a beacon, proof that the mighty Council could be challenged, that its chains could be broken. The name of Earth became a rallying cry, whispered in secret chambers, carried through encrypted signals across countless stars. The Council attempted to project power, sending patrols to the outer sectors, issuing decrees of loyalty, demanding tribute and silence, yet their orders carried less weight than before. The execution of the Envoy was supposed to be a message of dominance, but now it had become a symbol of cruelty and weaknesses. The Council argued and fractured. Earth continued to rise, fleets gathering strength, weapons humming with power, factories burning without pause. The galaxy watched with bated breath, and even those who despised humanity could not deny that a storm was coming, and that storm carried the name of Earth. The silence of deep space shattered as the first wave of Earth fleets surged beyond the boundaries of their home system, their engines blazing trails of white fire across the void. Thousands of warships advanced in perfect formation, carriers, cruisers, destroyers, and swarms of drones, a storm of steel and light moving with relentless precision. The Extermination Protocol had begun, and there would be no turning back. At the edge of Council-controlled territory, the first targets appeared, outposts, once thought invincible, ringed with defenses and patrolled by alien fleets. But Earth came with fury, not hesitation. Their ships unleashed weapons designed in secret, weapons that harnessed energies the galaxy had not seen before, beams of plasma that cut through shields like paper, missiles that split into swarms of guided shards, tearing apart hulls. In flashes of light, the defenders tried to resist their captains shouting orders, their ships scattering to form battle lines, but their coordination faltered. Their trust in the Council shaken by fear. Earth struck with ruthless efficiency, dismantling patrols, burning stations, reducing proud symbols of the Council into drifting wreckage. Within hours, entire sectors lay silent, their transmissions replaced by the echoes of destruction. On the bridges of Earth's ships, commanders stood tall, their eyes fixed on the chaos their crews worked with precision, hands moving across consoles, voices calm, even as enemy fleets disintegrated before them. They knew they were not merely fighting, they were sending a message. Every battle, every strike, carried the same vow. Earth does not forgive, Earth does not bow. Earth will burn those who defy its civilians. On Council worlds, watched from afar as reports streamed in of shattered fleets and fallen stations, panic erupted across colonies, entire populations fleeing into the wilderness of space. Markets collapsed, temples filled with prayers. Whispers of Earth spread faster than any fleet. They spoke of a world that had risen from silence into fire, a world that the Council could not control. Among The delegates of the council chaos deepened. Some demanded retaliation on a massive scale. Others whispered that Earth was too strong to be stopped. Already their unity cracked. Some sought to preserve their own worlds by breaking away, by seeking deals in secret, and already rebellion stirred among races long oppressed. Emboldened by the sight of Earth's fury, the human fleets pressed deeper into council space, each victory fueling the next, their weapons carving through lines of defense with unrelenting force. Planets shook under bombardments, stations crumbled under fire. Humanity had become a tide that would not recede. The Envoy, who had been silenced, now spoke through every cannon, every missile, every soldier who fought with his memory engraved upon their armor. The first wave of war had ended, and the council had been caught unprepared. Earth had struck like a predator hidden in the dark, and the galaxy now understood that humanity was no longer a whisper on the edge of the stars. Humanity was a storm, and the storm was only beginning. The council scrambled to rally its armadas. Fleets were summoned from distant sectors, convoys redirected from trade routes, commanders ordered to converge upon the core. Yet, despite the grand call to arms, hesitation poisoned every order, and mistrust festered like rot within their ranks. Many worlds whispered that the council had brought this upon themselves, that the execution of the Envoy had awakened a storm that no army could contain. In the hangars of alien strongholds, ships were fueled, weapons primed. Soldiers marched in columns chanting oaths to the council, yet behind their masks doubt lingered. Their leaders promised victory, but already news of defeat reached their ears. The destruction of patrol fleets, the fall of outposts, the silence of once bustling colonies. Earth advanced faster than the council could prepare, and every hour lost was another world consumed by fire. The presiding figure of the council stood before its delegates, declaring that Earth was nothing more than a primitive species wielding stolen power, that their victories were illusions, that the might of the galaxy would crush them soon. But even as the words thundered through the chamber, fear shimmered in the eyes of those who listened. They knew the truth. Earth fought with unity while the council fought with suspicion. Earth struck with purpose while the council wasted time in endless debate. When the fleets of the council finally moved into position, they found themselves already out. Earth was everywhere, like shadows slipping through cracks, like fire spreading across dry fields. Entire battle groups ambushed before they could assemble, stations destroyed before they could raise shields, convoys obliterated before reinforcements could arrive. The admirals of the council tried to coordinate desperate strategies, sending encrypted orders across light years, yet Earth intercepted them, unraveling their plans before they could take shape. Human intelligence operatives infiltrated their systems, sowing chaos while their fleets pressed the assault. Without pause, commanders who once boasted of their power now found themselves isolated, surrounded, and silenced. Across the stars, wreckage floated in silence, twisted hulls drifting among the ashes of their own defenses. Earth left no question unanswered. Their message was carved into the void with fire. Humanity had risen, and it would not stop. The protocol demanded extermination, and the soldiers of Earth carried it out with unrelenting resolve. In worlds far from the battles, ordinary citizens of the council watched in dread as the sky burned with the fall of their fleets. Some prayed for deliverance, others cursed the council for its arrogance. Still others whispered in secret that perhaps Earth was not the enemy but the savior, that perhaps the chains of the council could be broken at last. The delegates of the council quarreled louder than ever, their voices a storm of accusation, betrayal, and fear. No longer united, no longer confident, they watched as their empire fractured before their very eyes, and in the silence that followed each report, one truth became clear. Earth was not retreating, Earth was advancing, and soon the storm would reach the galactic core. At the heart of the galaxy, where the council had ruled for millennia, the great core world glittered like a jewel, suspended in the void, its spires rising into the clouds, its fleets spread across orbit like rings of steel. It had been the symbol of unity and authority for countless ages, yet now it trembled as reports poured in of human fleets advancing with unstoppable force within the war chambers. The presiding figure of the council stood surrounded by delegates, their voices sharp with fear and fury. Some demanded immediate surrender, others screamed for total war. None could find common ground. The chamber that once projected order now drowned in chaos, every voice rising above the other. Yet all knew the truth. The storm of Earth was coming, and there was no shield strong enough to hold it back. In the void beyond the core systems, the human fleets gathered in silence, their formations vast, their weapons primed. The stars burned with the light of 1,000 engines. Commanders stood upon their bridges, eyes fixed upon the horizon of battle, their faces carved with steel. Every soldier knew this was the final march. The last confrontation, the place where the fate of galaxies would be decided, the symbol of the fallen envoy, burned upon every hull his memory carried into the heart of enemy space. His death now a banner of vengeance, his silence now a war cry. Humanity had transformed. Grief into fury, and fury into a blade that aimed directly at the heart of the Council. No soldier doubted their purpose, no commander hesitated. They had come to end the empire that had mocked their existence. The Council armadas assembled in orbit, their ships vast and ancient, weapons glowing with power drawn from the core of stars. Their admirals stood ready, their soldiers chanting the oaths of loyalty, yet beneath the thunder of preparation there lingered doubt, for they knew Earth had already shattered every fleet before them, and the memory of those defeats weighed heavily upon their minds. The void fell silent as the two armadas faced one another across the darkness. The Council with numbers, the humans with resolve. The presiding figure declared that the galaxy itself stood upon this battle, that Earth would be erased from history, and yet even as the words spread across the comms, the human commander spoke only one sentence: Earth remembers, Earth does not forgive, Earth will end this then. The void erupted into fire beams of plasma tearing across the blackness, missiles streaking like falling stars, drones swarming in clouds that blotted out the light of suns. Fleets collided in a storm of fury. The Council fought with desperation, humanity fought with destiny. The battle shook the heavens, its echoes carrying across the spiral arms as entire worlds watched with breath held. At the center of the storm, the flagship of Earth advanced, its cannons roaring, its engines burning with fury, every strike carving a path toward the core planet itself. Where the Council watched in despair, humanity pressed forward, unrelenting, unstoppable, driven by the vow of vengeance and the weight of history behind them. The fate of civilizations balanced upon that final confrontation, as Earth unleashed its Extermination Protocol in full, and the galaxy understood that nothing would remain the same once the fire burned through the core.